Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today is the beginning of another reading vlog. It is Monday, it is the 16th of December and I just realised that it is one of my volunteers' birthdays today. I know that she isn't in and I'm pretty confident that we gave her a card last week, and if we didn't, well, we'll figure that out some other time. This morning I went into the kitchen. I made myself some toast. I was wearing a clean pair of trousers and now I'm dismayed because the only clean pair of trousers I own got covered in butter. So I'm currently pulling my t-shirt down in the hopes it'll just cover up the 2 lines of butter that I've got going down my legs. I have scraped most of it off, but I'm still very aware of the dark grease mark that I can't get away until later. Yesterday was Sunday, and so I did a few relaxing Sunday festive things. One, I've been listening to Terry Pratchett's book, A Stroke of the Pen, which is a lot of different short stories that were compiled from various magazines over the years, and a lot of the early ones in the book are very festive takes. And I am very much enjoying the listening of them. I read 2 of them last night and it is by far not the right way to consume these stories, so that is going to be an audiobook that I listen to this week because I enjoy it so much. The number of actors and actresses that have stepped forth to read these stories and bring them to life is just brilliant, and they do a fantastic job. So if you can listen to the audiobook of A Stroke of the Pen, it makes for great festive listening. I watched the Doctor Who special, A Christmas Invasion, or The Christmas Invasion, I don't know. It was David Tennant's very first episode, and I was saying to Charlie last week how I don't think I've ever seen this the whole way through. I was right. I watched it, and it was weirdly nostalgic because of the technology and the filming and everything. It screamed early 2000s to me, especially for all the weird, all of the city shots. Like, I'm not sure it's necessary to have all these shots of the city, but whatever. And the hints towards Torchwood, because that was going to become the thing, wasn't it? Still, watched that. Also watched Home Alone 2, and that was the majority of my day really. Got to walk Sally back down the towpath again, and well, I've been walking along the towpath every week, but it's not been the stretch of towpath that we used to, and the part that I like. It was slightly dismaying to walk down and find that a lot of the countryside I've walked past since I was last there has been erased and replaced with houses, but that seems to be part of the course nowadays around the town in which I live. We just get rid of all the countryside and we just fill it up with like Lego houses, because they just basically paint by numbers. There's just no soul in them. They're just these blocks partitioned off next to one another, and all I think about is the number of geese and other various assorted members of wildlife that are going to lose homes that they've always come back to. But hey, it's progression for you. I'm hoping that this week is going to be a nice restful one, so touch wood, that's what happens. Today I could really do with it going easy on me, because Lord, this shop went out of dancing on Saturday night and my legs still have not recovered. So I'm going to go, I'm going to make some coffee. I brought some fruit teas with me today because I'm just that type, and I will see you when I see you. It's Friday and it is incredibly cold today. At least I am feeling the cold, so the heating will be going on sooner rather than later. Let's talk about the reading or lack thereof this week, which feels like that's something I only do nowadays. I only talk about the things that I am not reading. So I started reading To Cook a Bear on Tuesday, which was the Charlie and Charlie Challenge pick from our Christmas cracker at the start of the month. Charlie and I came up with this ratings thing where we had to guess whether the rating of a book was higher or lower than the next book in the sequence. I failed miserably, and this was the book that I had to read as a result. However, Charlie and I have said that we don't mind DNFs and that sort of thing. It's just about getting through the books on our shelves. And unfortunately, after 100 pages, I recognised that this was a book that I just couldn't get on with, which was a shame, because this was one of the ones that I bought when all of the booktubers met up in York. It had been written in my phone for ages as a book to look out for. But unfortunately, I can't say whether it was a pacing thing. It was an incredibly slow book in terms of the way that the author wrote, very meditative, and I didn't have a problem with that. I did have a few issues with some of the more brutal aspects of the imagery and questioned why they were in there, but I also recognised that it was almost like a horror film style scenario where everything is incredibly quiet, and that causes the tension to raise, so that when these brutal moments do happen, it was almost like a jump scare within the book, and it showed the almost violent nature of man. I could recognise where the story was going very quickly, and I did not want to read that sort of narrative at this time. I don't know whether it's a book that I'll ever go back to, but I will just tell you now, I skipped to the end to see whether this book was going where I thought that it was going, and it just wasn't for me. What I did instead, I finished A Stroke of the Pen by Terry Pratchett, which is a book that I both listened to and read the physical copy of, and I very much enjoyed this. The final story in here felt like a precursor to the Discworld series, and I enjoyed that. And it meant that when Charlie and I were talking on Wednesday for our Christmas cracker, which will go online at some point, that I wanted to go and revisit some of my favourite Discworld books and actually continue with the series. Yeah, so there's something about the blurb of the next one that's putting me off, and I think that it's also the fact that I don't believe I've met any of these characters before. So I'm wondering, do I just skip it and go ahead to one of the Discworld ones that I want to listen to and then come back? We'll see how things go.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
So, it's Monday, and I did not find the time to record an end to last week's vlog. Therefore, I decided that actually what I will do, since I recorded so few clips last week, is to end the year with a vlog that takes place over the final 2 weeks of 2024. I am already behind with my editing, so I do have another 2 vlogs, I think, to go out. Or I do have 1 vlog. Either way, I'm a week behind, so hopefully this will prove to be an okay reset for the year. Will I continue these vlogs into 2025? I don't know. I have enjoyed being able to look back and see my entire year saved. But this is just where we are currently. So, hi everyone, welcome to week 2 of this reading vlog. Since last we spoke, I continued to read The Long Shadow by Celia Fremlin yesterday. I'm only 40 pages in. It is somewhat stylistic of the era when it was released, but I am enjoying that, and I already know a few people that I'm going to be lending this book to once I finished it. This woman's husband has died. She's gone to a dinner party, and that night upon returning home, somebody has wrung her and accused her of murdering said husband. At first, it seems like she couldn't possibly have done it, but over the last few pages, it turns out there is a mystery surrounding where she was on the night of his death. And if you watched me and Charlie in our final Christmas cracker of the year, you will have seen that we both said about listening to Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. This is one of the Discworld books that I have enjoyed in the past, and rather than continue with my listening of these, I thought I want to go back and listen to this one because it's somewhat festive and it is one that I enjoy. This time, however, I was listening to the Sian Clifford version. I've only ever listened to the Stephen Briggs or the Nigel Planer ones, and it is a bit like revisiting the story for the first time all over again when somebody else is narrating it, because I remember certain story beats and they come to my mind and they make me smile. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this bit, but it's still like, well, what comes next after this? And I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying having this different narrator because it feels like a different way of processing the story. Yesterday, due to how busy I've been, I haven't felt very festive. The first 2 weeks of the month just passed by so quickly because I had so much to do with work and that sort of thing, writing events and the like. And indeed, this week I've even got overtime tomorrow on Christmas Eve. So last week was the only week that I had free. And it just felt like there wasn't enough time to do all of the things that a person likes to do. And yesterday I was really properly fretting over what do I like to do at Christmas. And then I realised that honestly, reading wasn't at the forefront of my mind. I wanted to be watching the Christmas specials. So that's what I did. And Christmas films, and that's something that I always enjoyed doing at Christmas, was hunkering down with films and watching things with the family. So yesterday I watched That Christmas, and I have to admit I thoroughly enjoyed this film and now recommend it to everybody as a classic Christmas staple. Hopefully it remains on there for a while. If they had a DVD of this, then I would buy it, but I don't know whether they still make DVDs. Does anybody? Switched off that. I watched Dinner Ladies. You know, I love Dinner Ladies, love Victoria Wood. I've recorded All Day Breakfast from the 1990s to watch this evening. I then watched Mrs. Brown's Boys, which a lot of people despise, but for me it's completely mindless viewing that captures an era of comedy that is a bit slapstick, isn't to everybody's taste, and would be seen as scraping the barrel to a lot of people, but you know, sometimes you enjoy a little bit of easy viewing. And then I watched the Gavin and Stacey Christmas special from 2019 in preparation for the new special coming out on Christmas Day. And that was that. That was my Sunday. And I have to admit, at the end of that Christmas, I was feeling mildly festive. And then I started watching the specials and listening to Hogfather, and I was completely invested in Christmas. Indeed. At that point, I was like, I need to open the Asti and start drinking with my mother. But both of us are at work for the first 2 days of this week, and so it can't happen. So I went and I have a glass of port every night in winter, so I got one for my mother as well, and we sat there watching the end of Gavin and Stacey together whilst drinking port. And that was the beginning of my week. So now I'm in work. I don't know who will show up today because it's that time of year. It's been incredibly poor over the last week in terms of the charity shop. We haven't actually made enough money over the last week to cover the costs of running this place. But it's Christmas. I have to admit, this has been a shock to me because we usually have an incredibly busy December, and I don't know what went on, but unfortunately the people just haven't been coming in. So I don't know how things will go today. We can live in hope and die in despair, can't we? So I'll see you maybe tomorrow for Christmas Eve. And yeah, I don't know how this week's going to go, but it promises to be festive. It's Tuesday, it's Christmas Eve, and I am wearing the same cardigan I was wearing yesterday because that's just the type of person that I am. I have awoken with probably some very bad arthritic pain that I've not experienced in quite a few months, and that's fun. Somebody, well, they shouldn't have joked with me. I was talking about how it had been a long time since I had worked a Christmas Eve, just because of how they've fallen, and also me and the other shop assistant tend to always alternate one, so she'd work Christmas Eve, I'd work New Year's, because she'd prefer to have New Year's off and I'd prefer to have Christmas Eve off. It's just the way of things, and it's been the way things have worked for us for a few years. But unfortunately, they weren't able to work today. So I've come in, and someone was joking with me when I said about not really wanting to work today, that, well, what would happen if you fell ill? I was like, well, it's unlikely. And I'm not really ill. I've just got a lot of pain. I keep dropping things because my hands are in so much pain, and I realised that my left hip's gone funny again. So I'm just going to blame the cold weather, and I'm going to hope that Emily from Novel Novels can empathise with me, as she usually does in the comments. Anyway, did I read any more? Yes, I did read. I only read one more chapter of The Long Shadow by Celia Fremlin last night. It's a new habit that I'm trying to cultivate that I talked about at the beginning of the year, where I did actually do this. I did read more, and generally I do stop everything around 10 o'clock in the evening and have done all year and sit down and read. Some scrolling does happen on my phone. It shouldn't, I know, but some of it does. But recently I've adapted this to become just reading one chapter, making sure I've read one chapter before falling to sleep. And this is simply because it used to be a habit that I had as a child. I would try and read one chapter of every book that I had before bed. Now, this did mean that it meant books lasted longer. You know, I was reading fewer books as a child, obviously, and one chapter felt like a huge achievement to 7-year-old Charlie. And also, 7-year-old Charlie used to stress out about the smallest things. I can remember just like waking up in tears, well, not even being able to sleep and reaching this point of getting het up and in tears every Sunday for months because I was so worried about maths the next day at primary school. And this was another one of those worries when I was younger. And speaking to my mother and saying, sometimes I want to go to sleep, but the chapter's too long and I can't put the book down. And it took my mother coming up with the solution and saying to me, you know, you can just read until the end of the first sentence on the next page and put your bookmark in and close the book. It took, yeah, to be fair, I was 7 and needed an adult there. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe everybody in life just needs an adult there to help advise them. And unfortunately, we all reach a point where we're like, I don't want your advice no more, I'm grown. That's where I am. I read one more chapter of The Long Shadow by Celia Fremlin. My plans today are to listen to the Hogfather whilst I finish off my wrapping for Christmas. My sister came round yesterday and revealed what time she's getting there tomorrow for Christmas, so it's going to be another early one, but also generally means if she gets there early and we have an early lunch, then everybody's left and gone back to their own homesteads by mid-afternoon. And whether or not I walk the dog, I don't know. I felt bad for her because she's not had many walks recently because of the weather, but I'll be able just to kind of hunker down and touch wood, relax, and the Doctor Who Christmas special should be on, and Gavin and Stacey and all these things that we want to watch should be online, and I can just decompose. That's it. I don't have another word for it anymore. That's what I want to do. Anyway, today for the first time ever, Christmas Eve was supposed to be open till 4. My manager has said that if there aren't any customers in, to close. But yesterday, I said to everyone, because last week was a dire week, I said, let's not worry about making money, let's just have fun. And we had a day of epic proportions for a Monday. It was busy as anything. I was going out and helping on the till. I was just completely shocked and astonished, but really thrilled by it. If that were to happen today, then I'd probably stay open the full time. Anyway, we will see. It's a week later, so we are here to round out the final vlog of 2024. It has run on for 2 weeks. Not much has happened by the way of me doing anything other than being in work, but we made it to the end of the show. And isn't that a fine thing indeed? It has had its incredibly fraught moments. It's had its fair share of dramas and tragedies, but it's also had some uplifting moments, you know? Do I want to reflect on the year? If I reflect on the year and I reflect on everything that happened in it, then there is the chance that we could head towards some semblance of sadness. And indeed, over the last few days, one of the whole reasons that I didn't continue with this vlog was that my father was hospitalised just after Christmas, the day after Boxing Day, he came home incredibly ill from up the field, and when my mum came in from work, she agreed, took him off to hospital, and he came home yesterday because he spent 2 days sat on a chair in accident and emergency. They said, well, really, we could keep you in this chair for 3 days. His legs and feet have swollen up with water, and he is in the early stages of sepsis, but they wouldn't give him the antibiotics because they said they didn't have a bed for him. So he came home, he's got oral antibiotics, and he has to return to the hospital in a week. And that's just one of the lesser worries of the year. So yeah, ending out 2024 with that, which is fine. We always seem to end the year with my father getting ill. Maybe it's just the excitement of Christmas. Maybe this is how his body deals with it afterwards. But in terms of books, I finished reading Kitchen Diaries 2 by Nigel Slater. This is a book that I have been reading for the entire year and has made me want to continue the practice of taking some sort of hefty book and reading it through the entirety of the year. At the moment, I'm still wondering which book that might be. What book do I want to have as the one that I just keep going back to for an entire year? I also finished The Long Shadow by Celia Fremlin, and this is a very good suspense novel. It is stylistic of the 1970s when the book was released, and I appreciated getting the biographical note about the author at the end because that gave you an idea as to who the writer was and why they wrote what they did. I believe they called it domestic suspense, so it's all set within this one home and it created this claustrophobic sense towards the book. And this went on for about 200 pages and then something occurred and the suspense amped up a bit. I knew there was going to be some sort of twist, but I don't know whether it was the twist that I wanted, because as soon as one character mentioned something and there was this discovery made, I was like, right, I know exactly how this book's turning out now. Up until this point, I hadn't, and I suppose that was one of the good things about this book that Celia Fremlin did, was the breadcrumbs that she spread throughout. However, whenever it comes to a book like this, I always like it when we've actually met the culprit or the villain prior to the discovery so that we can have a chance of discovering it as well, and that didn't happen with this book. But that's just a pet peeve of mine. I'm pretty sure other people will very much get on with this sort of style of things, so I can't say anything about that. My plans today, with it being the 30th and before the end of the year, I would like to finish listening to Hogfather, because that is something that I started doing last week after Charlie and I spoke in our final Christmas cracker, and it's the first Discworld book that I've ever revisited. I haven't finished the series yet and I'm revisiting this one because, well, I wanted to. I'm glad to be doing it. I'm listening to the new version. You've shown somebody else is voicing Death, and there's somebody else I think does all of the footnotes. And I really like the production of this, and because there are new people reading it, it feels like an entirely new audiobook to me. So that's going to be finished. Going to finish reading the Christmas Chronicles. I had this revelation last night that I have started and finished my year with the same books for the last 5 years. I start the year with 84 Charing Cross Road and I finish it with the Christmas Chronicles. If a parcel arrives today, I know there's a novella in that, and I've been debating reading that on the final day of the year, but I'm very behind with the Elizabeth Taylor short stories. That book's being carried forward into 2025, and so I wonder whether to try and finish another one of the sections, because I've now separated it into all the different short story collections she wrote. I'm definitely not reading the entirety of this book by the end of the year. It was a great dream and aspiration I had back in August, but my reading slowed down, and I don't read short stories the same way that I read novels. When it comes to a short story collection, I read them very piecemeal. I like to mull over what's happened within the short story and give it some time to breathe, whereas with a novel, I feel like, okay, that one's done, I can move on to the next one now. I don't know what it is. I feel maybe it's because it's such a condensed amount of time with the characters, I give them more time in my brain. I don't know. Let's not analyse ourselves very early on a Monday morning. Because due to my father being ill, I have been in work now since 7:45. I have had breakfast here. That was fun. I'm also having to book next Monday off because of my father going back to the hospital and all that fun stuff. You know, these things would have been much easier if I had my own car, but we'll sort that out. I had a great dream the other day that I did actually have a car. But alas, alack and all that, it was just a dream. Anyway, that's me. That is 2024 over and done with, and I don't know what's in store for 2025. I've got a book coming out in February. Maybe should do an announcement about that properly at some point. I'll be working on a new book. Do I know what that book is yet? I don't know. Do I know what I'll be reading? You'll have to look out for videos about that. But yeah, that's me. I hope that you have enjoyed spending this time with me over the last year. What have been some of your highlights from 2024? And I hope that you got something out of this video, even if it was just something to do whilst you held a painful stomach. Because until next time, that is all.